Socialism for the rich, capitalism for the poor. It sounds like a political slogan, maybe something you'd see on a protest sign, but it's not a slogan. It's the operational logic of modern finance. And if you want to understand how wealth really moves in the world, how the system actually works when crisis hits, you need to understand this inversion, this backwards logic that makes poor people defend the very rules that keep them poor. Let me start with a simple question. When banks fail, who loses? When the system breaks, who gets rescued? And when that rescue happens, who actually pays for it? The answer reveals everything about how power flows through a financial system that we're told is objective, rational, and fair. It's none of those things. It's a protection racket, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Start with 2008. The financial crisis didn't appear out of nowhere. It was built deliberately through decades of deregulation, predatory lending, toxic assets bundled and resold, and bets piled so high that when the house of cards collapsed, it nearly took down the entire global economy. Wall Street had constructed a machine to extract profit from the poor and middle class through mortgages they knew were predatory, through loans designed to fail after a few years of payments. And when it did collapse, ordinary people lost their homes, they lost their pensions, they lost their jobs. In the United States alone, millions of families were foreclosed. People walked away from underwater mortgages. Retirement accounts were cut in half. Wiped out, generations of savings vanished overnight. Families that had worked their entire lives to save for retirement saw it disappear in months. And for what? For being stupid enough to believe a bank wouldn't lie to them about what they could afford. But here's where it gets interesting. The same banks that created this catastrophe, that deliberately sold garbage securities, that knew the risks and hid them. They didn't burn. They didn't fail. They got rescued. In September 2008, the federal government, using taxpayer money, injected nearly $1 trillion into the financial system to keep it from collapsing. Bailouts, loans, guarantees. The full weight of government power, backed by the money of working people, was deployed to save the institutions that destroyed millions of working people's lives. Let me be clear about what happened. The banks gambled with money that wasn't theirs. They lost spectacularly. And the taxpayers absorbed the losses, every penny, while the banks kept their profits from the years before, kept the bonuses paid during the bubble, kept everything. The executives who created the crisis weren't prosecuted. They weren't jailed. They weren't even fired. They received bonuses. The same CEOs who crashed the system walked away with golden parachutes, retirement packages in the tens of millions, while families lived in tents and cars. That's socialism for the rich. And it's not new. It didn't start with Lehman Brothers. It goes back further, way further. Take the savings and loan crisis of the 1980s. Thousands of savings and loan institutions, which had been loosely regulated and allowed to chase risky investments, collapsed spectacularly. They took depositors' money with them. The scandal was enormous. But here's what happened next. The government created the Resolution Trust Corporation, and it spent more than $100 billion, adjusted for inflation, nearly $200 billion in today's money, to bail out depositors and resolve the collapsed institutions. Who paid? Taxpayers. Who gambled and lost? The owners and executives of the S&Ls. Who walked away whole or nearly whole? Anybody rich enough to be insured or connected enough to get a deal. The savings and loan crisis should have been a cautionary tale. It should have taught us that if you allow financial institutions to gamble with other people's money, they will gamble. They will take insane risks. And when they lose, they'll expect someone else to pay for it. But that lesson wasn't learned. Or it was learned and deliberately forgotten by people in power who benefited from the arrangement. Because this pattern, this exact pattern of socialism for the rich and capitalism for the poor, shows up again and again, everywhere you look. It's almost like it's the whole point. Consider what happens when a corporation wants to relocate, or when a city wants to attract a business. Suddenly there's money. tax breaks, subsidies, free land, infrastructure built on the public dime. Billions in public money flow to rich people to incentivize them to maybe, possibly create jobs. And when it doesn't work, when the corporation takes the money and leaves, or lays people off anyway, the public takes the loss. Nobody demands the money back. Nobody prosecutes for fraud. The corporation gets to keep the subsidies, write off the losses as a business expense, and move on. But if a single mother asks for welfare, if a poor person needs food assistance or housing help, suddenly the language changes. They're lazy. They're gaming the system. They're dependent. They're the reason the government is broke. The rhetoric flips. The rules invert. Free money to the rich is investment. Free money to the poor is socialism. This is the scam at the heart of the system. It's not economics, it's politics, it's power, and it's built to be invisible. Think about the pandemic. When COVID hit, governments worldwide panicked. And you know what they did? They printed money. Trillions of it. The Federal Reserve expanded its balance sheet. The Treasury issued stimulus. Central banks around the world flooded their economies with liquidity. But here's the thing. That money didn't go equally. It didn't rain down on everyone the same way. The wealthy, who owned stocks and bonds and real estate, watched the value of their assets soar as the money supply exploded. Stock markets recovered in weeks. Real estate prices jumped. Meanwhile, working people got stimulus checks that barely covered rent. The Fed pumped the system. Banks recovered. Investment portfolios recovered. But wages stagnated. Millions of people were laid off. Millions faced eviction. Millions lost their jobs. And while they struggled, the wealth owners watched their net worth surge. Inequality hit record levels. All of it justified by the same logic that justified the bank bailouts. The system must be saved. The financial architecture must be preserved. Never mind the people inside it. Never mind that the people paying the bill are the ones who'll suffer most when instability returns. Now, look at what happened when small businesses needed help during the same crisis. The PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, was supposed to keep small businesses alive. And it did for some. But the program was also looted, sometimes by design, often through indifference. Large corporations found loopholes. Wealthy people got PPP loans designed for small businesses. Fraud was rampant, and when it was discovered, when billions in fraudulent loans were identified, the government's response was muted. Some money was clawed back. Some people faced charges, but mostly it was treated as a technical problem, not a moral catastrophe. Compare that to the response to welfare fraud, to food stamp fraud, to unemployment benefits fraudulently claimed. Suddenly there's surveillance, there are penalties, there are criminal charges and jail time. A poor person who fraudulently claims $1,000 in benefits faces prosecution. A rich person who fraudulently receives $1 million in a business loan might face a fine, write it off as a business loss, and keep the rest. It's the same crime, same harm, radically different response. This is the engine of inequality. This is how a society that claims to be capitalist and meritocratic actually operates. The rich get socialism. Everyone else gets harsh capitalism. And the trick, the genius of the trick, is that the poor are convinced to defend it. They're convinced that helping working people is wrong because it's socialism, even as they watch socialism rescue the rich. They're convinced that bailing out banks is necessary because the alternative is collapse, never considering that maybe collapse wouldn't be such a disaster if we let the gamblers actually face consequences for their bets. They're convinced that subsidies to corporations are investment, that tax breaks for the wealthy are stimulative, that all of it will eventually benefit them too through some economic mechanism that never quite materializes. That's the mythology. That's the story the system tells about itself. But history shows something different. Every bailout that transfers wealth upward increases inequality. Every tax cut for the wealthy that gets justified by trickle-down promises creates more poverty. Every subsidy to corporations to create jobs creates fewer jobs while increasing executive compensation. The pattern is clear to anyone willing to see it. We've lived through it repeatedly. 2008, 2020, the savings and loan crisis. Every time the script is the same. Rich people gamble, poor people lose. Government steps in to save the rich. The poor are told to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. This isn't an accident. It's not a market mechanism. It's not economics. It's policy. It's choice. It's the deliberate design of the system by people who benefit from it. And the cruelest part is that when you point this out, when you say that the system is rigged, that socialism for the rich while preaching capitalism for the poor is hypocrisy, you get called a conspiracy theorist. Never mind that it's visible in every budget, every bailout, every tax code. Never mind that you can watch it happen in real time. Never mind that the people doing it don't even hide it. They've just convinced everyone to look away. So what's the actual purpose of the financial system? If it's designed this way, is it actually meant to create prosperity, or is it just a mechanism to concentrate wealth? The answer should trouble you. It works exactly as designed. The system is the goal. Not economic efficiency, not broad prosperity, not opportunity. Wealth concentration, power consolidation, maintaining the hierarchy. And that hierarchy demands a sacrifice. Someone has to lose so someone can win. Someone has to pay the cost so someone can enjoy the benefit. In a truly capitalist system, the penalty for failure would be equal. In a truly socialist system, the rewards would be shared. But what we have is a hybrid that takes the worst parts of both. The discipline of capitalism for the poor, the rescue of socialism for the rich, the rules for thee, but not for me. That's the scam. That's the con. And understanding it is the first step to asking whether we want to live in a system designed to work this way, or whether we want to build something different. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.